Hello everyone, welcome back to the TAPED podcast, the most human podcast in the world. We are your hosts, as always, myself, MickyT.
And me, Nostalgia.
And joining us today, we have familiar faces. We have the one and only Connor1.
But everybody calls me Giorgio.
Of course. And we have Mr. elitimesfour.
Hello, Jojo!
We haven't seen you guys in a while. I was glad to have you back.
Yeah, wow, I'm probably going to be hopefully less drunk for this podcast.
That's what made it fun the last time, so keep chugging.
Oh, shit.
And with that in mind, today we are going to be doing another worst to best, and we're going to be doing a special one because it was only announced a few weeks ago that that this particular group are not making music anymore, and it was sad to hear, but we're here to celebrate their legacy. And of course, we're talking about the one and only Daft Punk, the best thing France ever did.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
I'm. Last time I was on this podcast, I was also doing an artist that was done making music, but I didn't know it yet.
Oh.
Wait.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm trying to remember.
Doom.
Wait.
Doom, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Shit.
Dude, F.
Wow. This just got...
Wow.
On that note.
On that note,
Wow.
yeah. On that note, yeah, we're going to be talking about... Yeah, we're going to be talking about Daft Punk. Guy and Thomas left a pretty good discography behind them, as we all know. And for this one, we're only going to be counting the 4 core studio albums they released, from Homework to Random Access Memories. We're also going to be including both of the Alive live albums, and we're going to be including the Tron Legacy soundtrack. So we got 7 projects to cover. I'm very excited to do this. Let's get right into it.
Let's go.
And we're going to start off at our number 7 picks. And I'm going to be a contrarian here because I chose Human After All. Oh my, I'm such a contrarian.
I chose Tron Legacy.
Oh, sorry.
We should have an order.
Oh no, we don't have an order.
Alright.
No.
Alright, Eli go and then Connor.
Okay, cool. My number 7 is Human After All.
Yeah. My number 7 is Human After All.
Okay,
so...
Obviously.
No, you go first, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, honestly, I don't have that much to say about this project. I don't think it's bad at all. I still, obviously think it's a good soundtrack. It's definitely the best thing that came out of that film, to be honest. But it just doesn't feel like a Daft Punk album to me. It's so rooted in the aesthetics of being a film soundtrack that it's just hard for me to enjoy it, like, in the context of listening to an album. It just is a little boring and tedious. And as far as I'm concerned, like, there's only like 3 real Daft Punk songs on this thing. It definitely has its moments. I think we can all agree on what a lot of those are. But overall, it's just definitely, I think, the weakest thing they've ever released.
I mean, I kind of appreciate it more for being somewhat unique in Daft Punk's discography, but like, I'll get to it when I get to it. But like, I appreciate it a bit more than as just like, oh, that one film soundtrack that Daft Punk did.
Yeah, I know, I get that.
But
I just don't really enjoy it that much.
Fair, I guess. But
I guess that's all that matters at the end of the day, whether you enjoy it or not.
Yeah, true. And I chose Human After All, which is not at all a controversial pick because since it came out, it's been like commonly agreed as the worst Daft Punk album, and I do agree with that, because as many issues do contribute to this album being a bit of a mess, in my opinion. Like, I don't think it's a bad album by any means. I don't think Daft Punk have a bad album. It just gets held back by so many flaws that it's kind of hard to feel sympathetic towards it. Like, it has some really great songs, one of them being one of my favorite Daft Punk tracks ever, which I will get to. But I don't think that it has that much of a, like, memorable sound in Daft Punk's catalogue. But it feels like one of those records that's ill-conceived and kind of cobbled together, like just an absolute mess. I think that the additions of more electro-clash and industrial tinged sounds are interesting, but they aren't really that fleshed out to the best of their creativity. as a lot of these songs are just very bare, very flat in its production, annoyingly repetitive, and the synthetic vocal loops especially just don't really do much for me on this album when I normally enjoy them on, say, Discovery and Homework. And the catchy grooves just aren't all there for me. And while repetition has always been a thing that made Daft Punk more enjoyable, it just doesn't really work out for Guy and Thomas on here for me. And given the backstory of this album, it's easy to see why this album is the way it is. And it's a shame because I feel like there could have been something good, because if you think about it objectively, there is an interesting innovation in their sound on this album, but as a whole, it's just not that memorable or interesting.
Yeah. I'll just say yeah, because you hit the nail right on the head there, Mickey. Like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, jumping off from that, if that's okay. Speaking upon the album, like, yeah, it's an interesting innovation, but not exactly the most successful in a sense. I feel like I like the album a lot more than most, purely because I really do appreciate its kind of like how like, while as an album, I think yes, it's very bare. It works for like, it lays down an amazing groundwork to be remixed into live sets, as shown with like Alive 2007, for example, where kind of like those songs were so much kind of like better. There was so much better done on there. But I mean, as an album, I do actually still quite like it. And I think it has some of their best songs, and I quite like the repetition of it. I just do think that it's quite inconsistent, and it kind of holds itself back by seeming like it was just made to be the groundworks for a live like recording. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll try to add on to that. So I'll say one word in the language that these guys will understand. Pourquoi. And that means why in French, for those of you who don't know. But
I didn't realize you were a linguist.
Yeah, what are you?
I studied 5.5 years of French in school, so
I speak French.
it's one of the things I remember.
French.
And this was the reason why. Anyways, so yeah, Human After All is pretty much the textbook example of how to not follow up a classic. Obviously, as Mickey said, Daft Punk has never made an album without a vision. But as far as visions go, this album feels like you're being stabbed in the eyes over and over again.
Very graphic.
I feel like their attempt at making very graphic indeed. Their attempt at making a harsher sounding record for the most part fails to me, except for some of the singles and maybe one or two of the album cuts. So like, whereas an album like Homework was repetitive and the songs didn't evolve all that much, they evolved somewhat and they didn't give me a headache. But that's what many of the songs on this album do. They don't really make an effort to go anywhere at all. And like I said, I usually don't mind stuff like that too much when it doesn't like evolve. Like I don't know, I'm a fucking Caretaker stan, and that's like 70% of his material. But if I'm listening to a song that's 7 minutes, as dull as like Emotion, the closing track, it's just absolutely soul sucking. And I don't know, it's just, I've been listening to this for a long time, and it's just, I don't know, the weakest moments on the album just get worse and worse for me as time goes on.
Yeah, I can see that. Those moments especially just get very egregious to me, especially with more listens. And with that in mind, my favourite tracks from Human After All are the title track, Robot Rock, and Emotion. My least favourite tracks are Make Love, The Brainwasher, and Steam Machine.
My favourite tracks on Tron Legacy were End of the Line, The Rest, and End Title. My least favourite track was Nocturne.
My favourite tracks on Human After All are the title track, Robot Rock, Television Rules the Nation, and Technologic. And my least favourite track is Steam Machine.
My favourite tracks on Human After All, and none of you guys saw this coming. The title track, Robot Rock. I have a soft spot for Make Love. I like that track. I don't know if other people don't seem to care for it, but I like it quite a bit. And my least favorites are Steam Machine, and The Brainwasher, and Emotion. And I heard Steam Machine at a baseball game once.
Wait,
So
really?
That's cool.
That's very odd. Would have expected.
Yeah.
Would have expected them to play the new fucking Green Day album, honestly.
Sorry.
That wasn't out yet.
True, actually. And with that in mind, I'm going to move on to my number 6 choice, and I chose Tron Legacy.
I chose Human After All.
I chose Alive 1997.
I chose Tron Legacy.
Nice.
Hmm.
Alright, so, Connor,
What
you can
order?
go after me then.
Yeah.
Sure.
Alright, so, yeah, Tron Legacy, and, you know, I know that soundtrack work isn't anything new for Thomas, especially. I don't know about Guy, but I feel like it is huge for any artist to be part of a big score for a huge film, especially for Daft Punk being a part of, like, a big franchise being released under Disney. And while the movie sucks, and while it has some interesting things going on in the soundtrack, instrumentally and sonically, it's just decent on its own. Like, it certainly fits the movie's setting, given how large and synthetic it is. I like that Daft Punk with their own interesting spin on the standard orchestral sound of what a movie soundtrack would typically sound like, and it sure as hell sounds good, but when putting it up against some of Daft Punk's other albums in their discography, it doesn't really warrant a whole lot of memorability or personal enjoyment to place it any higher. You know, its 22 tracks are just sort of lacking in consistency, and it just has, like, what I like to describe like being, well, obviously just film score music, but at the same time, another way I would describe this whole album, it's just the Yellow Submarine of the Daft Punk discography, except that it's actually somewhat decent and not total orchestral vomit. You know, I like how beefy it is, I like how large it is, and it definitely has its standout tracks, but it's not that interesting, like, as a whole album, and, you know, it's not that driven, like, by trying to be a Daft Punk album, but more so just a score for a huge budget film. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so I have similar thoughts to that. I've never seen the actual film, because the only things I've heard about it is that it's pretty much just an average science fiction
Literally
movie.
is.
And I think that's kind of fitting, because the soundtrack to me is also average. And honestly, I probably would not have bothered with this if I wasn't doing this episode. It doesn't really feel like it's Daft Punk at all, since 90% of it is orchestral. There's very few elements of the sound that they had explored prior to this that's actually on here. So as a result, the only thing that really separates this from being separates it from other generic orchestral film soundtracks is that there's a couple of songs that actually sound like them on it. So I think without them, this is a soundtrack that could have been done by pretty much anybody.
Honestly, you could have just put this soundtrack behind any science fiction film, and then it would just sound fine. You know, like, it's that just, like, non-standout for a film soundtrack.
Yeah, I went with Human After All. And, you know, understandably, this is a very divisive album. Divisive album in the bands, groups, duos.
And
Band, sure. Discography. It's definitely a change of pace for Daft Punk. It's got very little to do with French House, and, you know, it definitely takes a lot of influence from, like, industrial music and electroclash and just more techno, just hard industrial techno kind of stuff. And it doesn't really do all that much with those influences. It does, you know, as you guys said, it does sound very repetitive. A lot of the tracks on here just seem like they'll go somewhere, but they don't really. And, you know, just like Eli said, it works fine in a live environment where the tracks are remixed, but unfortunately that is in this project. This project just, especially after listening to Alive 2007, just feels very just bare and sloppy and not all that interesting. I do think it has some great tracks. I do think there are moments where the duo definitely, you know, bring their ideas and you know, flesh them out enough to make a very fulfilling track. But a lot of the time the execution just is very sloppy, and I know this is supposed to kind of be the point, but it just sounds so synthetic and robotic that it becomes a bit hard to, you know, get invested in and connect to like tracks like Television Rules the Nation or Prime Time of Your Life, it doesn't really have that charm that Daft Punk's music usually has. Just take a look at any track on Discovery, for example. It's night and day for me.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Am I speaking next? I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. So, Alive 1997. Just as a preface, I don't actually dislike a single album from Daft Punk. Even Human After All, I would say is a strong 7. So, Alive 1997 being this low isn't me saying I dislike it. I think it's really, really good. It's just, out of all of their albums and releases, it's the one I have the least to say about. It's just a very nice kind of like, very clubby mix. It's probably their most kind of like French house, like, to the core, like, club album that I could imagine, like, going crazy stupid in like some really sticky bar too. But besides really that, I don't have much to say about it. It just it's a very confident, very well made, very easy to just kind of like get lost in. But for me, it kind of just serves as a really good kind of background music, which is by no means a bad thing because it's very, very well made. But that's kind of it. I don't have much else to say.
Alright, with that in mind, my favourite tracks from Tron Legacy are Overture, The Grid, The Game Has Changed, End of the Line, Derezzed, and Fall. My least favourite tracks are Recognizer, Armory, Arena, Rinsler, Nocturne, and Rectifier.
My favourite tracks on Human After All are Human After All, Robot Rock, Make Love, Television Rules the Nation, and Emotion. My least favourite tracks are Steam Machine and The Brainwasher.
Based. My favorite tracks on Tron Legacy are Derezzed, which is the only song that I actually knew before listening to it, obviously. Yeah. And the end titles as well. Really cool track. And my least favorites are Armory and Arrival.
And for Alive 1997, this is the only one of their albums where I don't have a favourite or least favourite. I think it all kind of just serves their own same kind of vibe.
I think we're going to have a similar take there, to be honest.
Yeah.
And, you know what, speaking of Alive 1997, my number 5 pick is Alive 1997.
My number 5 pick is also Alive 1997.
My number 5 pick is Random Access Memories.
My number 5 pick is Alive 1997.
That's a little spicy. That's a little spicy.
Guys!
No, but at the same time, though, it's nothing to get mad about, because it is still a good album.
Isn't that what you have at number 5?
No.
I said I have Alive 1997 at number 5.
Yeah, so do I.
No.
Oh,
Why did I have to be the contrarian again? Fuck!
You can go first, actually, since you're the only one who picked Random Access Memories.
Cool. Well, so Random Access Memories, technically their final album now, with what's just came out. But you know what? Listening back to it, it is a phenomenal send-off for a career as eclectic as Daft Punk's. Because instead of making some of the most cutting-edge and amazing electronic music that the mainstream will ever see, they really take it back to their roots and almost, in a sense for me, make music. They bring it back and they make an album comprised of taking from the influences of the music they loved to sample in their albums. Like, for me, this album sounds like music that 10 years ago Daft Punk would have sampled on Discovery, and I really like it for that. And the instrumentation is lush and gorgeous, and even ironically, I would say this is their most human album, even with one called Human After All. Like, this is easily the most human and lush and warm sounding album, just with all of the really gorgeous kind of like funk, it all like lathered throughout this album. It's very, very pretty. The only reason it's down this low is purely because I don't really, besides a couple songs which are definitely like top 5 of all time, like Daft Punk at least for me, I don't really come back to the whole album because I find myself more coming back to their more kind of like electronic French house influence stuff, but that is no means a fault to this album. I think for what they were going for, it's absolutely fantastic. And once again, like I said, with the new kind of like news of their breaking up and not getting another album from them, this is a fantastic final album in retrospect.
Exactly. And with that in mind, I chose Live 1997. And it's Daft Punk's first live album, and, you know, it's just a general live performance with tracks from Homework and a bunch of other house and electronic moments. And while I do think that Thomas and Guy perfected the live setting on another live album, which I will get to, Alive 1997 is still a really great listen, in my opinion. I think that it serves its purpose well and manages to get the blood pumping as one long song. It may not be anything special on the surface, but when you're in the right setting and in the right mood, it goes off, especially with the more abrasive and rough recording. It's just fun to jam to as a whole thing. I suppose where it loses me is in its length and how it's just one long song on Spotify, and I'd like it more as something individual rather than one long thing, and it doesn't really hold a lot of replay value for me because of that. And you know, I would much rather listen to Alive 2007 over this, but if ever I listen to it again, I'd sure I'd be having a good time because it's still a pretty good live set. That's all you really need to say there.
Yeah, no, I don't have a lot to say. It's definitely a good album. It's one of the band's most raw and most just grimy projects, and it definitely represents a very important era in electronic music. And you know, as Eli said, it's so like rooted in French house that it's probably their most like just French house thing they've ever done. It's very grimy, it's very repetitive. I like the way they remix everything, but it's just not that interesting. And mashup wise, you know, they've done a lot better stuff live. We'll definitely get to that. For what it is though, it's definitely an enjoyable project. If you don't really enjoy what's on Homework, then there's probably nothing here for you. The tracks don't really deviate that much, aside from a few interludes and a few, like, what's the word, transitions that are quite unique and definitely memorable. But overall, it's just kind of some live recordings of Homework. It's nothing to write home about, really.
So Alive 1997 is pretty much just it's a fun look into the early days of the duo as live performers. I think so. I did some research. This is only a segment of this particular concert, because the rest of it couldn't be cleared because they had sampled stuff that they couldn't get the copyright stuff cleared for. But I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that this is probably the best segment of that concert. I'm not really one to critique a live house performance. I've never been to one myself, but I have a feeling that this is how it's done. It feels sort of like a marathon run of Homework's best moments that are incorporated together really well. And I think there's also plenty to love about the rest of the stuff on here. I will say that I think I'll add on to Nostalgia's point about the mashups. I don't think they're as creative as they are on the other Alive album that we're going to talk about later, but it's still really good. And my only complaint about it is that I wasn't there for it.
All right. I completely forgot that Eli went first, so I was just blank there for a second.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I doubt I don't have a favorite track. There's no tracks.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what to say.
It's just everyone's blanking.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
My favorite track on Alive 1997 is Alive 1997. And my least favorite track is Alive 1977.
1977.
Exactly. Yeah. But there is a bit around the 7.5 minute mark that I think is really good. And also, I should have said this when I was talking about it, but this reminds me in a lot of ways of that 4533 EP that LCD Sound System released in structure. But I just wanted to point that out.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And because I completely blanked, I just realised I should have done favourite and least favourite first. But my favourite tracks on Random Access Memories are Give Life Back to Music, Instant Crush, Lose Yourself to Dance, Touch, Get Lucky, and I just want to do a special one for Contact, which is, it might be one of my favourite songs ever made. And my least favourite track is The Game of Love.
Ooh, that's a little spicy. It's very
I
interesting.
don't. There's not. There's not really a song I dislike like heavily on it. It's just like, eh.
Fair. Yeah, I get that. I get that. I just I'm just a little bit shocked about that because I love that song. Ah.
No, Mickey, I'm sorry.
It's fine. I suppose we're kicking off the top half of the list. I guess since it's only 7 albums, but hey, my number 4 pick is Homework.
My number 4 pick is Random Access Memories.
My number 4 pick is Tron Legacy.
My number 4 pick is also Homework.
Wow.
Right, the Homework boys go first and second.
Okay, I'll do my homework.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Anyways, Homework is a really good debut that to me is flawed, but it's got a lot to admire. I love a lot of the danceable and pulsating grooves on this album. I love how they add a lot of these really heavy sounds and effects on these tracks. I think Daft Punk right out of the gate show that they are creating some really infectious, earwormy, and just catchy material with some essential and classic electronic bangers, especially with the amount that are on this album. Some of which are just some of the most creative electronic tracks that the mainstream have ever seen, honestly. The sound of this album is a pure electronic and French house sound, and a lot of the more poppier and intricate sounds of their later records isn't really that present, but that doesn't really bother me because there's some quality to be found in its simplicity, especially in the first half and the last leg of the record, which has some of the most infectious grooves I've ever heard, and it goes so hard. Where this album loses me is in its middle section, as a lot of the ideas that these tracks in particular explore come off a little bit rough and a little bit derivative of tracks that preceded it, particularly for tracks like Rollin' and Scratch and Teachers and Rock and Roll, so it comes off a little bit one note to me in that sense. And while I can respect what Thomas and Guy were trying to do with these tracks, I feel like they could have been kind of cut out and made into a B-sides album or something. Not to mention, this record is a little bit too long and a little bit too bloated in my opinion. Definitely, I would like it more if the track list was cut down a little bit. But besides that, it's just a great album. It has some incredible electronic songs, and it's just a pretty good record all in all. It's a great foundation for Daft Punk. Connor?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I thought Nostalgia was next. Okay. So Homework, yeah. First things first, this is a horrible album to do homework to because it's really hard to do homework when you're trying to dance. But this is arguably the most important French house album ever, even if it's not the best one. I think the fact that it put the genre on the international map is deserving enough of credit on its own. And even in a vacuum, this album is great. I have in my notes that there's only one flaw. I think there's actually kind of two. The first one, I think there's a couple of filler tracks in the second half, like Mickey said, and also some of the 7+ minute songs could be a little bit shorter. That's fine. But yeah, just in general, I think because of the sequencing, listening to it from front to back can be a little bit exhausting at times. And it's something I'm not always in the mood for, but the first half is practically perfect. I've been listening to this for years and I still love it as much now as I did back then. And I have a story, and this is going to sound like a shitpost, but it's true. So when I was in 8th grade, which is like 12 to 13 years old for you guys, who don't have the American school system, we had to put together a portfolio at the end of the year of a bunch of work that we had done, like poems, like short stories that we had written, and we were allowed to include some song lyrics to pad out the pages. So naturally, being me, I copied the lyrics to Around the World. So there's just 5 straight pages of Around the World in the middle of my portfolio.
Oh my god.
Amazing.
I'm sad that I don't. I'm sad that I don't have that anymore, because that's a relic that's lost to time.
Gosh.
But that's a personal story of mine.
That's amazing, honestly. Couldn't imagine what your teachers were like when they saw that.
Yeah. Is it my turn now? I'm getting a little confused. I went with Random Access Memory, and this is the point in my rankings. Every album is a 9 or above. I think Random Access Memories is an incredible project. And, you know, Daft Punk have always shown great appreciation for artists of yesteryear. And, you know, on Random Access Memories, they straight up just revived disco and made it cool again in the 2010s. From start to finish, this is one of the most sophisticated and smooth electronic projects I've ever listened to. And honestly, at times it's even a stretch to call this an electronic project, because it's just so eclectic, it's so just lush, it's musically fulfilling, it's dense, it's pristinely produced. The production on here is incredible. And from start to finish, it's one of the band's most memorable and catchy projects. It's definitely breathed new life into their career. It definitely gave disco as a whole kind of second wind. And, you know, while it's not my personal favorite, I do think that the band, I keep calling them a band. If it's more than two, it's a band. I don't care. If it's two or more, it's a band. The duo have definitely done better stuff in my opinion, but some of the highs on this are just among the best things I've ever done. It's an incredible project, and you know, any other band, any other like I'll keep calling them a band. I don't care. Duo. No, band is, if it's more than one, it's a band. I don't care.
No. It doesn't. No, that doesn't feel right.
It is.
It's not right. No. No, I'm persistent on this. That is not correct.
No, it is.
No, it's not.
Whatever.
Oh my god.
So fucking aggressive so quickly, Jesus Christ.
I can't.
You two are just arguing about Daft Punk being a band. I'm just trying to grill, like.
Anyways, Random Access Memory, very good. If my brain is, if it's plural, if there's more than one person, band.
No.
Oh.
It's just not correct, though. It's just not correct, though. They're a fucking duo.
Alright.
Go ahead, Eli.
I just want to say before going into my Tron thing, I blanked on the fact that that Random Access Memories is a fucking disco album. So apologies. I forgot the word disco. So
disco.
But besides that, anyways, Tron Legacy. I gotta say, a lot of my love for this album soundtrack, album, whatever, it does come from nostalgia. In more than one way, of course, but I don't know where I was going with that. I thought it'd be a funny joke about nostalgia, but you don't even like the album that much. Anyways, Tron Legacy soundtrack. Most of my love from it comes from nostalgia, especially because the film, it's a film that I do have a lot of love for, mainly because I watched it when I was younger, and also because now I even quite like the film. Sorry, guys.
It's perfectly fine.
Tron Legacy is one of my favourite soundtracks of all time to any film, and while I completely understand the whole thing of finding it kind of like... while I understand finding it kind of tough to listen to the outside of the film context, I'm a dumb film student, so I eat this shit up. I do think they do some really interesting stuff with the classic like strings formula, and really kind of give it that digital kind of like huge synthetic edge, which really fits with the world of Tron. And even on its own, I think it kind of like is a really good breeding ground for some of Daft Punk's best songs. Once again, I think all of their albums have have a sprinkling of their best songs. Like Durez is amazing banger. I love the end title song as well. That song hits so hard. And yeah, while I do definitely think the soundtrack is probably better than the film, I think it really kind of goes toe to toe with Daft Punk's albums as a important part of their as important part of their legacy.
Comedy.
Comedy. I'm never getting invited back on here now, am I, after that one? Jesus Christ! Anyways, yeah, Tron Legacy. Good song, album.
True.
I make shit jokes all the time, and I'm still here, so it's fine.
I mean, I do have to say, I still think it's good. I don't think it's bad.
Okay, that's
we're
good.
talking about.
Exactly.
I think it's decent.
Swag.
Alright, with that in mind, my favourite tracks from Homework are Daft Punk, Around the World, Revolution 909, Phoenix, Fresh, Burning and Alive. My least favourite tracks are Teachers and Rollin' and Scratchin'.
My favorite tracks on Random Access Memories are Give Life Back to Music, The Game of Love, Giorgio by Marauder, Within, Instant Crush, Touch, Get Lucky, Fragments of Time, and Contact. My least favorite track is Lose Yourself to Dance.
Spicy.
Owl noises.
I mean, fair enough.
Cricket.
Yeah. Yeah.
My favorite tracks on Homework are Daft Punk, Around the World, Alive, and Revolution 909. Two things to add on to that. I don't know if you guys have seen the videos for the videos for Daft Punk and Revolution 909 are so stupid.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, fun fact about the Funk music video. It was directed by Spike Jonze, who done
Spike Jonze. Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
And then was it Around the World
stupid...
directed by Michel Gondry?
Oh, whoa. Really?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Stacked.
That is fucking poggers.
Yeah, they were popping off early on.
Damn.
But yeah, and then another stupid fun fact. If you guys are familiar with the crowd sound effect at the beginning of Revolution 909.
Yeah. Yes.
When they get, I think it's, I don't know if it's before or after they get chased away, but there's some people talking. That particular sound effect is used at the end of Dare by Gorillaz too.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh.
Which is pretty interesting. Yeah, it's pretty common. I've heard it in a couple TV shows too. You'll be unable to hear it when you check it out.
Yes.
But yeah, and then least favorites are Rock and Roll and Oh Yeah.
And for Tron Legacy, my favourites are The Grid, Recognizer, The Game Has Changed, Nocturne, Durezd, Disc Wars, Flynn Lives, and the title track or Tron Legacy end titles. And my least favourite is Rectifier.
Okay, we're in the top 3 now. And
let's go!
My number 3 pick is Random Access Memories.
My number 3 pick is Homework.
My number 3 pick is Homework.
My number 3 pick is Alive 2007.
Alright. We could just go in the normal order then. Yeah, so, Ram. And I love that album title, by the way. Just Random Access Memories, just like, you know, the flashbacks to the styles that they were influenced by, and, you know, Ram, it's, you know, computer shit, you know, robots, Daft Punk, funny, haha. Yeah.
It's a really good album cover. No, title and album cover, but
yeah, honestly. And yeah, Ram, the most recent and, you know, the final album that Daft Punk ever made, and it's an album that has a huge amount of nostalgia factor for me, as it was one of the first albums I ever bought a physical copy of with my own money, and I'm looking at the CD right now, and it is gorgeous. And since then, it's remained a very special record to me, and even then, it's a very special record in Daft Punk's discography, as this album saw Guy and Thomas essentially making a record that heavily appreciates and gives love to their roots, as this album is filled to the brim with disco influences while also still being definitively Daft Punk, and as a whole, it's amazing. And the production on this album is fantastic, and that cannot go understated, especially with how warm and lush the soundscapes of the album are, which are oddly intimate in a sense. You know, the danceable and disco-tinged grooves of a lot of these tracks are incredibly engaging and get me interested in the sounds of the songs from basically from the atmosphere to the instrumentation. Some tracks on this album even just left me just mesmerized with each sound it explores, and as a whole, it's incredibly consistent with some of Daft Punk's best songs ever. It was also like one of the first times that Daft Punk incorporated like actual like features into the tracks, if I'm correct on that. And I feel like Daft Punk choose like the perfect choices for these features, you know, like Pharrell, Nile Rodgers, Panda Bear, Julian Casablancas, Todd Edwards, Paul Williams, and even Giorgio Moroder, the father of disco, whose contribution adds to the theme of the record. And that's what I love about the features on this album. They add so much to the tracks because either they're catchy or because they're just significant to the themes of the album. While nostalgia definitely plays a role into my love for this record, I couldn't bring myself to rate it any higher than what I have above it. And it's honestly, with that out of the way though, it's one of my favorite records of the 2010s overall. It's easily got some of the best hit songs of the 2010s, and yeah, with that in mind, I love Random Access Memories.
No.
Yeah, I went with Homework, and honestly, this album is near perfect for me. Like, everything above here is like a strong 9 to 10. And, you know, it's kind of painful ranking this only third because I genuinely adore this project, but the two albums that I have ranked higher just make more sense at the top of the pedestal for me. Homework is certainly a lot less flashy than a lot of what Daft Punk would go on to create. It's very repetitive, very mechanical, sometimes even quite skeletal, but the minimalism just works so well on every single track. The band just use very basic sampling. It's not quite what it is on Discovery, but those basic samples and those repetitive samples are just perfect. The cuts like Daft Punk and Around the World are among the most memorable tracks in the duo's whole discography. And from start to finish, this project has some of the most consistently good and exciting and energetic material that French House has to offer. And not to even mention how pristine the production sounds. You know, the bass is so clear, the beats are hard hitting, they've got such a punch to them. The sampling again is fantastic. It's an incredible start to the duo's discography. It's definitely got a lot of nostalgia tied to it as well for me. It's one of the first projects I've heard from the group. I used to listen to this project on repeat so much. Like I've probably heard this album more than I have Discovery over the course of my life, if I'm being honest. Yeah, it's a great project, and it's one of the duo's best for sure. I just had to give the number 1 and 2 spot to something else.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Well timed, I must say.
I tried to time it as best as I could, but it was so difficult.
I can imagine. Jesus Christ. Good job though. Good job.
Thank you.
But yeah, no, I mean, fuck me. Like, the best thing I can describe with Homework is if this was my debut, I don't know if I'd ever want to make an album again. Like, the fact that Daft Punk immediately came out of the French house scene swinging with an album as strong as Homework is just a testament to the near genius level of production that these two are working on. Like Homework is so even now I would say some of the songs sound so fresh and still would hit just as hard as they did when they came out in 1997. Daft Punk and Around the World are still considered not club classics in a sense, but they're still considered classics just in the electronic scene for how well they pushed and innovated on the French house formula. And their use of repetition is very, very particular, but very, very good at really kind of establishing a really good bass line or specific word, like on Around the World, for example, and it sticks with you. And you can hear the song once or twice, but it will that kind of repetitive melody or vocal snippet will stick with you. And I think that's the genius of Homework, is that the repetition, unlike on Human After All, works in its favor by helping just make the songs more kind of instantly memorable in your mind when you think of them. When I first if you told me to think of a Daft Punk song, one of the first ones that would come to my mind would be Around the World, purely for just how memorable and sticky that kind of main melody and driving drum pattern is. And obviously, I do think it's a little too long, but that's not even too much of a problem, because if I'm really in the mood for the album, the length doesn't matter. It breezes by, and you know what? I gotta say, Connor, after enough time and listening to it, it is pretty good homework music. Just don't try doing algebra to it though. It's a fucking nightmare. But that's that's my thoughts on homework.
Okay. So Alive 2007. So if you're listening to this podcast and you were at this concert, I hate you. Jokes aside, so I finally got around to watching the live show last night in professionally shot 4K quality on YouTube with some friends, and that was truly next level shit. So the set list for this show is honest. It's really just classic after classic, and there's no weak sections at all. I find that the way that they combine songs from their career together is absolutely enthralling. They even made some of the weaker tracks than Human After All sound dynamic instead of stale, which is quite an achievement. And I think there's a lot of moments on here that border on being or are peak music. And honestly, if this is the closest I'm going to get to seeing them live, then I feel like I'm satisfied. But the only reason I have it here and not higher is because the ones I have higher, I have a bigger personal connection to.
Okay, with that in mind,
Tracks, yeah.
my favorite tracks from Random Access Memories are Give Life Back to Music, The Game of Love, Giorgio by Moroder, Within, Instant Crush, Lose Yourself to Dance, Touch, Get Lucky, Doing It Right, and Contact. My least favorite track is Beyond.
My favorite tracks on Homework were Daft Punk Direct, Revolution 909, Daft Punk, Phoenix, Fresh, Around the World, Rollin' and Scratchin', Burnin', Indo Silver Club, and Alive. My least favorite track was Teachers.
My favorite tracks on Homework are Daft Punk Direct, Revolution 909, Daft Punk, Phoenix, Fresh, Around the World, Rolling and Scratching, Rock and Roll, Burning, Alive, and I don't actually have a least favorite for this album.
My favorite tracks on 2007, Alive 2007. This is fewer tracks than it sounds like it is, based on the track titles. But my favorite ones are the opening piece, Robot Rock, Oh Yeah, the Too Long, Steam Machine, bit, Around the World, Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger, and my least favorite is the aerodynamic beat / Forget About the World.
Okay, we're in the top two now. And with that in mind,
Nice.
my number 2 pick is Alive 2007.
My number 2 pick is also Alive 2007.
For once, I'm not the contrarian. My number 2 pick is also Alive 2007. Woo! Let's go!
My number 2 pick is Ram by Paul McCartney.
Go! Let's go!
I'm
See
kidding.
that one coming.
Okay, I'm kidding. It's Random Access.
God damn.
Can I just go first because I'm the only one that doesn't have a live chat?
Yeah, go.
Alright.
Okay. So first things first, I really wish I could go back in time and relive the release of this album. I was in high school and I just remember how massive Get Lucky was. It was legit everywhere, but it's one of those rare instances where it was something I didn't ever get sick of. I think that in my personal opinion, I think this is the album that really cemented themselves in the collective minds of pop culture in the U.S. In particular. You really can't collaborate with superstar figures like Pharrell Williams and Julian Casablancas and go unnoticed if we're being real. I think what makes this album so special to me, or special in general, other than it being an amazing disco throwback album, is that it feels like it brought together a lot of musicians from different corners of the musical map and also from different eras of music. I also can praise every collaborator individually in a timely manner, but I do want to shout out Todd Edwards in particular, who is probably, he only contributed 2 tracks in their catalog, but he's probably my favorite of all the collaborators that they've had. I think they were a match made in heaven. And then also I want to plug his debut solo album, which is very uplifting UK garage, which is definitely worth listening to if you have the time. I think defining this album as simply retro disco is a bit unfair to just how varied the album's tracks are. It's really hard to distill the album down into a few sentences, so I think I'll just leave it there. But without a doubt, this is one of the defining albums of my adolescence.
I kind of count more as new disco, if anything.
It's yeah. I mean, it's pretty disco.
Yeah, but like at the same
Yeah.
time, it doesn't feel like traditional disco in that sense. It feels more like a new
At
take on it.
times, honestly, it does at times.
I mean, yeah, at times, but like,
It's like
I feel like as a whole,
You know what?
I feel
I
like
think we can all agree it's Daft Punk disco.
it's Daft Punk disco. Yes, we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that. And
Yeah.
I'll get to Alive 2007, Daft Punk's second live album. It's one that happens to be one of my favorites from them, and it also happens to be one of the most beloved live albums ever made, and for a good reason. This is legitimately incredible, and I am so jealous that of the people who all went to that concert, and I hate you all. I just couldn't imagine being at that. Like, Jesus, it must have been some atmosphere, and it must have been something else to witness. You know, the fact that this thing is just, just an hour and a half like live set is insane to me, because it just doesn't even feel that long to me. It's probably due to the fact that it's just such a dynamic and infectious set that just shakes so much about Daft Punk's songs up, like blending them together, transitioning them into something new, giving new life into these tracks, and I just love what it does. It represents how universal Daft Punk's songs are in a live setting. Some of these tracks were just made to be played live and remixed, and they add a whole new dimension and life to these songs. Even the tracks that I didn't even care for on Human After All are given a whole new purpose and a whole new life on this album, and I'm glad that it did, because those tracks had so much potential, but they're being met with these live sets. And, just all of the material that they take from Homework, Discovery, and Human After All is elevated in this live setting, and it's a weird thing, but the crowd adds a tone, like a whole new tone to the experience, honestly, and as a whole, it's just such a good time it's just fantastic. It's just so good. And it's so unfortunate, that we'll never get to experience a show from them ever again. It's gonna be, it's difficult to just think about that, but at the same time, like, their shit was made to be played live, and I can understand why. Also, I love the fact that I think this gives a bonus to the album for me personally, but I love the way that this album basically ends with "Music Sounds Better With You." Like, that's one of my favorite songs ever, and just the fact that it just ends on that, given that was it Thomas was involved with Stardust?
Yeah.
Yeah, just that is just really cool to me. It just comes full circle in that way for me. But yeah, anyway, Alive 2007. Yeah, it's pretty fucking great. Listen to it, please. I beg. If you haven't already.
Yeah. I mean...
Yeah. Oh, wait. Is it me, or is
should-
it...
I think it's
I'm confused.
it's nostalgia then, Eli, because we let Connor go first.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, honestly, I don't even know where to begin with this project. Even though it's a live album, in a lot of ways, it feels like the group's defining project. In this live set, Daft Punk just seamlessly blend every single era of their career into one of the most magical and exhilarating listening experiences I've ever had the pleasure of listening to. The mashups on here are just absolutely perfect, and this album just somehow manages to both feel like a greatest hits compilation and also an album full of new material. Every single moment on this album is just heart pumping. It stimulates the euphoria of actually being at a Daft Punk concert. The atmosphere is it's hard to deny, and it just bleeds through this album. And it's also just fantastic how pristine and clear this project is. Even though it is a live recording, it just sounds fantastic. The crowd noises also don't take anything away from this project. They kind of just add to the atmosphere of the whole thing and add to the magic of it all. It's definitely one of the best live albums I've ever heard. It's definitely my favorite electronic live album, and it's easily one of the best things they've ever released.
Based. Honestly, if I was given a time machine and was given the option between ending World War One or going to watch Alive 2007, catch me singing the words to Human After All. Fuck me, like, Alive 2007 is so fucking good. Like, I mean, there's not really much else I can add that, like, you and Mickey have really said already, because it's just like, it's pretty much like the perfect live album when it comes to electronic. You can't. I don't really know how you could do better from the just incredible transitions. The way that it's like they're remixing their own songs as well is so. Oh, it's absolutely fantastic, and it's very inspirational. Especially like that final song where they just mix like Human After All together one more time. Music Sounds Better With You. It's absolutely incredible. Like full peak music kind of stuff. And even on the live show as well, watching it, like the set design of that pyramid is so imposing, and it's one of my favorite just kind of designs I've ever seen for a stage. And it really kind of helps add that weight to this album. And unlike a lot of live albums, I really do think that it is more than holds its own outside of watching it with the live performance. It's, oh, wow, it's really something else. There's not really much else I can add on to that. That's fucking like, whoa, wow. Yeah.
I feel you.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So I'll give my favorite. Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay, my favorite tracks from Alive 2007 are Robot Rock, Oh Yeah, Television Rules the Nation, Crescent Dolls, Around the World, Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger, One More Time, Aerodynamic, Daft Punk, Daft and Direct, Superheroes, Human After All, Rock and Roll, Daft Punk, and Human After All together one more time, Music Sounds Better With You. I have no least favorite tracks.
My favorite tracks are all of them. My least favorite are none of them. Whoop.
Yeah, I mean, with mine, my favourite tracks are all of them. My least favourite tracks are none of them.
My favorite tracks on Random Access Memories are Give Life Back to Music, Giorgio by Marauder, which makes me need to change my underwear after every time I listen to it. Instant Crush, Touch, which after the breakup, man, that song fucked me up, man. Get Lucky, and Fragments of Time, because Todd Edwards is a god, as I said before. Least favorite, and this is a hot take for some reason, is my least favorite is Within.
Really? Oh.
Respectful.
It's so sad.
Yeah, but in like a, I don't know, in like a melodramatic way that I don't.
I mean, in a melodramatic way, yeah. Yeah, we all have the same number one, so do you want to just, like, say it all together on the count of three? Because why the hell not?
Yeah.
1,
Yeah.
2, 3, Discovery.
Music to be murdered by.
Music to be murdered by.
Discovery.
Discovery. It's so obvious.
Yeah.
Also, while I have a second, check out my Stardust songs ranked list on Album of the Year.
Okay, sure, bud. Yeah, Discovery. What a fucking incredible album, honestly. Like, it's my personal favorite Daft Punk album. It's honestly one of my favorite electronic albums ever. And it came out when I was born. It was just one of the best albums, like, in the 2000s. And it's certainly, like, the best Daft Punk album. Like, you can't deny that. It's just, it's so dynamic. It's just so colorful, full of life, and it's just so fun. It thrives on being something more than just an electronic French house dance pop album. It thrives on being a goddamn experience that's just so fucking fun. Jesus. The production on this album is amazing. The grooves are infectious. I love the way that the synth sound in this album. I love the pulsating grooves. I love the samples. The samples are amazing on this album. They're utilized in such a really creative way, and since I'm a fucker for good sampling, like, this one just ticks all the boxes for what I love when, like, in sampling. And as a whole, it's just so good. There's no bad tracks on this album for me. Every track just hits the right moods. Like, if it's like something slower, like Voyager, or like something like Veridis Quo, and then there's just stuff that is just pure unadulterated fun, like One More Time, Crescendolls, Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger, all those tracks. It's just insane to me. And this album also accompanies like an anime, Interstellar 555, and it's actually a really good film if you want to watch it. It works so well with the music. It has a really good message behind it, and it's just such a colorful and vibrant piece, much like the album. It's kind of hard to even like describe how much I love this album because I'd be waffling on for like an hour, but like it's just something else for me. It's the Daft Punk album that I definitely listen to the most out of anything, mostly because it's just so pristine, just so fun and vibrant, colorful. It's just really an achievement for Daft Punk and for electronic music as a whole. It's just truly something else. And some of the best like hits of the 2000s are on this album too, songs that I have huge nostalgia for, and nostalgia factor definitely plays key in me loving this album as much as I do. And I don't really care about that because as a whole it's just an amazing album anyway. Some of the best like electronic songs are just like ever are on this album. Some of my favorite songs ever are on this album. And yeah, with that in mind, there's only really one track that I would say is like not as good compared to the rest, but I'll get to that soon. The title is self-explanatory of it though, so yeah, Discovery, love it.
When it comes to studio albums, as much as I love all of their other projects, I couldn't justify putting anything above Discovery, not even Alive 2007. Every track on here is iconic. Certainly it's a lot less raw and rigid than their debut, and it's really the first time Daft Punk really tried to do something more colourful and truly eclectic with their sound, and the result is a success in all departments. This is just an absolute masterpiece. It's a perfect house album, and it's one of the greatest albums ever made in my opinion. The use of sampling throughout this project is just mesmerizing. It just turns classic songs into completely new and decade-defining club bangers. It's really mind-blowing. There isn't really a weak moment on this thing. Every single track serves its purpose to the overall flow and the overall direction of this album. It's a magical album. I don't know if there's any other word that would describe it better, but it's just magical.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I honestly, you two have explained your reasonings for it so well that I only really have one thing to say, which kind of like sums up what I think of the album, which is 2 minutes 24 in on Crescendos. Thank you very much.
Yes. Connor?
Are you done? You're done already? Oh, sorry. All right. I apologize for not warning people to strap in their seatbelts before I said Discovery is the best Daft Punk album.
Whoa, buddy!
I know I got to slow down there. Put a content warning on that. Anyways. So Discovery, first thing is it's in my top 10 albums of all time. It's currently in my number 7 spot. And similar to what I said about Mad Villainy when we did the MF Doom podcast, the reason I have it this high in my all-time ranking is not only because it's a fucking masterpiece, but also because I owe a large part of my musical taste to it. I found Daft Punk at a very young age, and this record is the one that spurred my love for electronic music in the first place. So I pretty much owe a lot to it for that. It's another example of an album I can't do justice on an episode, on an episode alone, so probably have to write something full length on it at some point. But I came back to this record after not listening to it for ages last year, and I found myself falling for it all over again. And I honestly can't really fathom why at any point in my life I didn't think it was a masterpiece, because it is. Discovery is one of those albums that's always been with me, and like I said, it's critical in the development of my musical taste in general. It makes me want to dance, fall in love, cry, and feel a whole other host of emotions all at the same time. So yeah, it's perfect.
All right.
Yeah.
We did it.
Mm.
I think this
Let's
is
go.
the first time in a long time that we all collectively had the same album as a number one.
Yeah, wow.
It's been a while since that happened. I can't even remember when that happened. trying to think.
Yeah, Jesus
Or did
Christ.
it even have?
Yeah, to be honest, I wasn't.
Or did it even
I
happen at
wasn't
all?
too far off putting Alive at number 1, but I just couldn't justify.
Yeah,
doing
it was very, very close between those two, but I mean, that just Discovery's just unreal.
We had the mollusk all at the top for the Ween episode.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah, the
Mollusk.
mollusk. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
And
I'm not even gonna voice my opinions on Ween. This is a fucking Daft Punk podcast.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna assume that it's not very positive.
I mean, my favorite thing by them is 12 Golden Country Greats.
I mean, honestly, yeah, that's a good album. Not gonna lie. You know, if you want to check out the Ween Worst Best, go ahead and do that, please. Thank you. Yeah, with that in mind.
Exactly.
Yeah, with that in mind, we did it. We ranked every Daft Punk album. Eli and Conor, thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciated it.
No, thank you for inviting us on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm happy that I finally got to do an episode with you.
Yeah.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, and just a special thanks.
Yeah.
And, just special thanks to Daft Punk themselves for making incredible music. It's, it's a shame that it's at an end, but nothing can last forever, and
Exactly.
Daft Punk can't.
Yeah.
And with that in mind, thank you so much for checking out today's episode of the Taped podcast. We really hope that you enjoyed. What were some of your favorite Daft Punk albums? Who did you agree with the most, actually, out of all of us? And with that in mind, links to our own individual me and Nostalgia's individual YouTube channels will be in the description. Links to all of our Album of the Year pages will be in the description. Links to Eli's music will be in the description also.
Yo!
And yeah, with that in mind, I've been MickyT.
I've been Nostalgia.
That's it. I've been Eli!
I've been.
This was deadpan thing ever.
I sound so defeated. I sound so defeated.
Fair. And yeah, see ya.
Bye.
Goodbye! And...
I noticed Craig wasn't here when we finished. Does it mean it? Huh.